you experience trauma in your life. How do you recover? You can learn about this from nature. Imagine you have a wound. Naturally, what happens? You don't put too much weight on that wound, and you don't apply pressure. If you have a cut on your knee, for example, and you fell and injured it, you avoid putting pressure on it because your body signals pain, warning you not to stress it. This is your body's way of protecting the wound. Then, a scab forms, sealing off the entire area. Why? Because your body wants to protect the wound from bacteria entering from outside. Next, pus might develop, serving as a protective barrier against bacteria, helping the wound to heal from within. Inflammation also plays a crucial role in healing. Eventually, the scab falls off, revealing new skin, which is sensitive and vulnerable at first. This is the third stage, the initial pain and avoidance, the scab formation, and finally, the scab falling off. During this phase, you protect the sensitive new skin, knowing that it is still fragile. Over time, the skin thickens, and although a scar remains, you no longer feel the pain. Now, let's compare this to emotional and physical trauma. If you've been physically or sexually abused, your nervous system reacts immediately, pushing you into fight or flight mode. This is a primitive response evolved from our ancestors: fight if possible, flee if necessary. There's also a third response: freeze. This too evolved for survival. In the animal kingdom, predators often avoid attacking dead prey, so freezing can sometimes give the appearance of being dead, potentially saving a life. If a child is abused by someone who is supposed to protect them, such as a parent, the child cannot simply run away, as they depend on the abuser for basic needs like food and shelter. Fighting back isn't an option because the child is too weak. Freezing becomes the only hope, trusting that the abuser will not go so far as to kill them. When this happens, the child experiences pain, not just physical but emotional as well. They feel the betrayal of love, thinking, "This person loved me, but now they hurt me." Every time they see the abuser, fear and pain arise, rooted in this betrayal and physical harm. The child's emotional response is to avoid the abuser, becoming invisible, silent, and trying not to draw attention. As the child grows, they may begin to project this fear onto every authority figure, reacting with fear, anger, or both. This pattern can persist into adulthood, where every encounter with authority triggers these reactions. So, how do you break this cycle? Even as a child, you can't prepare for every fight by going to the gym because you're still developing. And as an adult, confronting the abuser may be too dangerous or simply not possible. But what you can do is recognize the pattern. You can become aware of it. You can become the person your inner child would feel safe with. This is a deep concept, but if you understand it, your life can change. For instance, if you were beaten as a child, you might now love children deeply and vow never to hit them. If your inner child, the 7-year-old version of you, could see you now, they might feel safe hiding behind you, knowing that you are a safe person. But here's the challenge: this safety you provide may be reactive rather than responsive. You might have stopped evolving, becoming fixated on one way of being because of what happened in your childhood. To break this cycle, we need actionable steps. The first actionable step is vulnerability. Just as the scab falls off and the skin beneath is exposed to the environment, you too need to expose your wounds, emotionally, not physically. If you keep protecting yourself by isolating, calling yourself shy or introverted, you may be delaying your healing. Instead, try to engage with the world, even when it's uncomfortable. For example, if you're afraid of authority figures, you don't have to react with fear or anger. There is a middle ground. You can learn to express your thoughts and feelings rationally, even in the presence of authority. This could be at work, at home, with the police, or any other figure of authority. By slowly exposing yourself to these triggers, you strengthen your nervous system. If you're afraid of the police, for example, and you find yourself shaking with fear, try sitting with those sensations. Experience them fully, without judgment, and breathe deeply. As you do this, create a mental distance between yourself and the fear. Watch the fear. When you can observe something, it is no longer a part of you, it is separate. Over time, with repeated exposure, this distance will grow, giving you an objective view of reality. Trauma often pushes you back into a childlike state where you feel and think like you did when the trauma first occurred. To stop this regression, you must fully experience the sensations of trauma, even if just for a moment. Observing these sensations with curiosity and without judgment is enough to create a shift. You might ask, what's the point of observing these sensations? The answer is that every time you do this, you create distance between yourself and the trauma. This distance is like exposing the wound to air and sunlight, allowing it to heal. Just as the sensitive skin becomes normal, rough, thick skin, your trauma can heal when exposed in a controlled, safe environment, with you regulating the process. Finally, let's talk about the scar. A scar isn't the same as the original skin, but it has a similar feeling. You almost can't feel it anymore. Similarly, when you gain full control over your nervous system, the trauma loses its power over you. For instance, if your fear of the police is rooted in trauma, instead of being afraid, you might begin to think, the police are important. I pay taxes for their service. They are here to protect me and society. When you change the meaning of your fear, your nervous system begins to heal. When the trauma loses its meaning, you heal.